I'm in Vancouver today at Fort Vancouver and actually in the interpretive garden, and I'm with Elaine. And Elaine, what is the interpretive garden here? Why is it called that?
The reason that we call it the interpretive garden is, for one thing, it's not actually in the location of the original historical garden. And also it's not at quite the size. The size of the historical garden would have been about 8 acres. So this is what we have created. Actually, it's been volunteers that have created this garden, and they maintain it. And it's to represent to the public what the different plants were that were growing in the historical garden. So it's something that we use to interpret to the public, but it's not really a recreation of the original garden.
Right. And you know so much about this because you're actually an archaeology person for the Park Service, which I never thought that there was a division of that. So that's so interesting, and that you know all of this history. So who was here first that used this garden?
Well, this garden represents an element of the occupation of the Hudsons Bay Company, a British fur trading company, that arrived here out in the Pacific Northwest in 1825, and they continued their occupation here until 1860. It was largely contested territory at the time. Both the British and the Americans claimed it and agreed to utilize it together until the issue could be settled as far as whose territory it was going to be. And actually during the time that he was here, the garden was referred to, the original historical garden was referred to as Dr. McLaughlin's garden. You had to have permission to enter Dr. McLaughlin's garden. We're talking about an early Victorian period, essentially. And this was something that was typical of gardens at that time. It was not unusual.
So Elaine, you actually did a research project here about the flowers in the garden. So what did that entail?
Well, in 2005 and 2006, we did archaeological excavations in the historical garden, which was just over here to the west. We put in several trenches. It actually was an aspect of a Portland State University and Washington State University Vancouver field school, archaeological field school. So we had university students who were actually doing the excavations. And there's been a lot of activity on that space since it was a garden. So we didn't find definitive things on the landscape, such as beds and paths and hard landscaping and things like that represented the garden. But what we did find just in the sediment itself was pollen that indicated to us several plants that we hadn't known from historical documents had been grown in the garden. And the one thing that's nice about garden plants is the pollen is heavy. It's insect pollinated rather than wind pollinated. So we also could determine exactly where those plants were being grown. So that was very interesting. And several of the flowers that are growing in this interpretive garden now have been added to the garden based on our research, such as the bachelor's buttons and zinnias and asters and yarrow. Those are a few of the plants that were discovered through our archaeological research.
So I have to ask, what was the reason behind all that information, all that research?
All that research that we did. We actually hope to be able to reconstruct some of the original garden, and the National Park Service requires that if you're going to reconstruct a landscape feature or any even a structure, that you know exactly where it was and exactly what its dimensions were and what the characteristics were of that location. So that's why we were looking for the garden, so that we would be able to recreate a portion of it.
So why do you think they planted so many beautiful flowers in this garden?
Well, it was an aspect of gardening at the time to have flowers, all the different various types of things together in the same garden. Part of it was a companion plant technique of gardening, but they also, the Victorian period people really enjoyed flowers and colorful spaces, and we all know they had their own unique style of gardening, particularly related to flowers. So several reasons why there were flowers in the garden.
Yeah, you just don't think out here in the outpost that there would be so many pretty flowers. Right. That's really great.
Right. Well, it's also an aspect of colonialism to take these different plants all around to places around the world to see how well they do, so that they can provide them to people who are coming to homestead in order to achieve better health, for one thing, and of course provide good foods and enjoy the visual aspect of having the beautiful colors in the gardens.
You really have to come out to see this beautiful garden and the Fort Vancouver site. So for more information, please go to gardentime.tv. We'll click you over to the Fort Vancouver website and you get all the information about this whole historical site. Thanks so much, Elaine.
Thank you.